Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on episode 2 of Average Jocks Hockey Podcast. Last week, Joel and I made our predictions for the 2022-2023 season. This week, we're joined by Simon Tsalikis from TSN 690. We will touch on Crosby's early season success, worries in Leafland, talk about nicknames, the Calder race, and more.
So again, thank you for joining us. I'm an avid listener of TSN 690, so it's kind of weird to put a face to the voice that I hear so often.
Could have shaved, eh? Maybe I.
You know what? No, it's good. Actually, the photo we pulled for our promo, I think, comes from your realty stuff. You're clean shaven. I think you have a flower actually in the shirt. It looks good.
You know what? I think it's funny. I got called about a week ago to go. That's a TSN 690 picture. Okay.
Okay.
Every year they call us to go take pictures for press passes. If they're going to promote us, like, for Melnick, they're going to put them on the side of a bus. Whoever else, they're going to advertise them. So I've been part-time with the station for 17 years. They've never used the picture once. So when I got there, I just walked right to the photographer and he's like, what's up? I said, listen, let's just bang this out. On perd notre temps, moi, toi. There was like 2-3 other women there. Like, what's wrong? I go, I've been here 17 years. They've never used the picture. I go, we're just wasting our time. He's like, okay, fine. We'll take. Did you do makeup? I said, yeah. I did makeup. I didn't do makeup because I knew they're not using my picture. I started walking there and he starts dabbing my head and he's like, no, you didn't. I'm like, no, I didn't. I go, but again, they're not using my picture. So that picture you have is from like God knows when. But it's okay. That was a younger version of me, so it's a better version.
That's okay. And you know what? It's still, even though it's spontaneous and through makeup, I've seen Mitch Melnick's. Yours is definitely the far superior photo. When I seen Mitch Melnick's, I was a little scared. I'm like, this guy gives me like Lou Lamoriello vibes. I don't really want to mess with this guy.
The old Mitch had that. The old Mitch, when I got to the station, it was like hard to talk to and this and that. But I think it was just life was a little bit probably more difficult for it. But now much more chill, easygoing than he's ever been. But 10 years ago, I had the same vibe, man. Like,
well, they'll definitely have to update one. Maybe get him even like half smile. Would
no. You won't do that.
Let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Sidney Crosby's looked pretty good so far this season, despite numerous serious injuries throughout his career, and has managed to continue to put up points at a pretty consistent pace for a player his age. I know quite a few Pens fans out there still put Crosby ahead of McDavid as a complete player. But can Crosby actually keep up with McDavid's scoring pace? I don't really think so. I think Crosby is going to dip eventually. So far, his early season success doesn't show that. What do you think, Simon?
No. Nobody's going to compete for a Hart Ross if the guy in Edmonton plays anywhere near 82 games. So that is out of the question. Playing a little basketball today, so I got home at around 8:30, just checked the scores and stuff like that. You see a guy like Steven Stamkos too, right? I think he's up to 5 or 6 goals. So some of this, I know it's the young Bucks, league, but some of these older guys are doing well. I think that with Sidney Crosby, there's too much in his game that just won't allow him to just focus on his offensive numbers. He's never going to be a liability in his own end. He is going to get pucks out of his own end. He's going to chip, do whatever, win battles, cycle. And I think when you add up all those things and you look at, a generational player who is a complete hockey player, I just don't think he can compete with the Matthews, who I think Matthews is very good in his own end, but he's so prone to offense. And Connor McDavid, who is not great in his own end, but he is told to push the pace, push the game. Whereas Crosby, kind of like Bergeron too, I'm sure if Bergeron, was told, hey man, we don't need any more of those defensive responsibilities. We just want you to push offense. I'm sure his totals would increase by 15, 16, 17 points. It's the same for Crosby, but I just don't think that his DNA will allow that.
I think you hit it on the head right there whenever you said, the DNA. Those players like the Crosbys, the Bergerons, and even the Stamkos, who I think is right on the cusp, come from kind of an older era right before it switched to the offense-minded, where two-way centers were really appreciated. And not to say that they're not appreciated now, but the superstars are really pushing the offense. The Matthews, the McDavid, the Barzals can go up and score, and then you have, your Phil Denos, your Jake Evans, your Christian Dvoraks that can worry more about that shutdown role because your high guys are only focusing on offense. And not to say that Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews or Barzal aren't good in their own end, but that's, I think, secondary to them putting on a clinic in the offensive zone. So speaking of young guns and looking at the scoring, we can take a look at our picks that we made last week with the Calder. And Justin, you and I had a consensus pick of Matty Beniers winning the Calder. Simon, do you share that sentiment?
Calder?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Sanderson in Ottawa. I think the Senators are still going to be relatively weak on the blue line, but I think their top 9 is deep. It's talented. I think if you're a defenseman, man, and you're playing with any one of those top 2 lines, you get the puck out of your zone, you get it with, a decent transition game. He's got the ability that I love, and you're seeing it, you saw it with Makar, you see it with Hughes, the ability to go from defense to offense in a heartbeat. I think he has that. I think offense comes easier to him than it comes to Thomas Chabot. And Chabot's a good player. I just think offense comes to Sanderson a little bit easier. I think he's a better skater. And as the season progresses, I can see him exactly what the Canadians need, somebody that's going to quarterback a power play. And I can see him sitting there, kind of like what we saw with Sider in Detroit, right? Just get to that 45, 50 number. And for a rookie, I think that's a big deal.
Fair. He wasn't even on my radar of
What's the list? What's on that list?
I had Matty Beniers, outside shot. I think Slafkovsky has potential just with his size of being a man. If he can turn that on and kind of that dream line that we were talking, or not we, but so many people were talking about Caulfield, Suzuki, Slafkovsky. I think he had an outside shot.
Is McTavish still considered a rookie?
He is. He rounded out my top 3. And also that big body in Detroit in I might butcher his name, Soderblom.
Yeah, 6'9" guy there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's huge. He looked fantastic the other night, Montreal, Detroit. That kind of rounded out my group. I didn't really have Sanderson in there just because I figured Chabot's still going to get most of the power play time in Ottawa. But I mean, you definitely made a case that I did not for Jake Sanderson.
I think he can make. Again, I don't know enough about the Senators' power play and how it looked in preseason or how it's looked early in the season, but the Brinkett and Giroux and Kachuk and Struzzo, man, there's a lot of options out there. And if you can somehow, between the two of them, Chabot too, right? If one of them can distinguish themselves as that quarterback, you can make a living back there.
All right. So the Ottawa Senators actually have 5 guys under the age of 25 with already 10 points for Brady Kachuk, Drake Batherson with 9, Pinto and Stutzel with 6, and Jake Sanderson, Simon, your pick for the Calder, already has 3 points on the season. So Ottawa Senators have been waiting a long time for this type of hockey, that's for sure. And it's definitely going to be a fun time to be a Sens fan.
All right, let's travel up the 401 to the other half of the Battle of Ontario, where the Toronto Maple Leafs superstars have hit a dry spell.
Austin Matthews has 1 goal, 5 assists in 7 games so far this season. Mitch Marner has 1 goal, 4 assists, and 6 penalty minutes in 7 games. And top defenseman Morgan Rielly has no goals, 5 assists, and he's a -4 with 7 penalty minutes through 7 games. Obviously, 6 points for Matthews and 5 points for Marner through 7 games is pretty good. And Rielly with 5 points as a D is very good through 7 games. But it's not the scoring that we were expecting from the Leafs top line in the reigning Rocket Richard Trophy winner.
Last year, Austin Matthews started off slow as well, but he was also returning from an injury. This year, this is not the case.
Pressure is already mounting in Toronto, especially after some tough losses to Montreal and Arizona earlier this season. Some are already calling for a change. Simon, who do you think the first victim of the Leafs' poor play will be?
I gotta think it's the coach, right? I gotta think it's the coach. It's crazy that we wouldn't make. if they beat the worst team in hockey, they're 3-1 and 3 wins in a row, and nobody's talking about it. But it's, man, one loss, and they were down in that game 2-0. They tied it 2-2. They could have won that game, But it's incredible how we are in game number 4. But I just think they're, it's that perfect storm for them. Their giant question mark was goaltending. The giant question mark was the health of their goaltending. And 2 games in, Matt Murray is out for an extended period of time. So I think they are feeling the pressure. They're a very talented club. And it's kind of crazy. I think it's one of the crazier sports, not teams, but kind of like sports stories in North American sport. Like, they lost game 5 in overtime. Suzuki scores, or Caulfield, whoever it was. Kotkaniemi scores in game 6. Last year, they had, the best team in hockey, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, in overtime. You need to find the goal. You got the, Art Ross, no, not the Art, you got a MVP out there. You got, Tavares and Marner, point-a-game players. It's incredible when you look back at one goal. One, not a series win, not like, we met, just one goal. Game 5, game 6 against the Habs, game 6 last year, I think it was game 6 at Tampa Bay. How highly likely, I don't know, you guys look, you're younger than me. They used to happen to the San Francisco 49ers. They couldn't beat the Cowboys. And then eventually Steve Young went on to beat the Cowboys, and they went on to win Super Bowls. Like, it was a giant weight, the pressure, all those things. If you ever YouTube it, there's a little thing, Steve Young talking about taking the gorilla off his back, and one of his old linemen is like, pretending like he's ripping a gorilla off his back, or a monkey off his back, whatever. So, very talented team. I don't think goaltending will be a problem. I think right now it's nerves. One loss sends that city in turmoil, only because they're feeling an incredible amount of pressure. But again, I've never seen this in sport. Like, trying to think, like in basketball, like if you miss a shot at the buzzer, like a good shot, then you go on to lose in overtime, and the franchise is never the same. I don't know. It's just that these guys are a goal away from turning it around, getting to a second round. And I would imagine the Leafs getting to a second round are probably going to look better than they've ever looked, because it'll be all the weight of the world off their shoulders. But if anybody bites it first, I think it's going to be the coach.
You almost had me believing in curses once you brought up the 49ers and the Cowboys, and then all the stuff with the Leafs. I mean,
we saw it for years though with Ovechkin, right? Like, he couldn't, first round exit, him and Backstrom and Semin, and I don't know, 115 points, whatever they got that year, and they lose to Thomas Plekanec and Andrei Markov, like the ultimate 1 seed, and they lost there, and they came back and they kept losing to Crosby and the Penguins, and finally they broke through. And that one time that they did break through, they went on to win a cup. They haven't been as good as of late, but the moment they broke through that, they went straight to a cup final. It was kind of like everything else was easy for them.
All right, Leafs fans. Well, hopefully this year is our year, as so many of you like to say. So good luck the rest of the way. We're going to move into some lighthearted things now. We're going to talk about nicknames. The Leafs nickname being the Laughs would be one of them, but we're going to focus more on players, especially after Arbor Jacki came out in a report saying that his nickname is Wi-Fi, since the way his last name is spelled, which is definitely appropriate for him. Some of my favorites would be he's big, he's bald, he's Alex Ald, and give me the fuel, give me the fire, give me Nito Niederreiter. Those are more of some sayings. But Simon, do you have any favorite hockey nicknames?
There's a couple. There's the classic, the great one, just because he actually turned out to be the great one. Like, it's great to have a nickname, and then when you live up to the nickname and the nickname actually is the great one, it's kind of messed up. Shout out to my friend Chris Nyland. Knuckles is just a perfect nickname.
That is very fitting nickname.
Yeah, that is a very fitting name. What else? I guess Super Mario was pretty cool for a while.
Yeah, I like that one as well. I mean, there's the
Russian Rocket, Pavel Bure was good for a while.
Russian Rocket. I heard Connor McDavid has McJesus out there.
Yes, that's yeah.
But I
I
feel
hate
like
stuff like Mark Messier moves, stuff like that. I hate that's just
well, that or you have, they'll just add like Z or like an S to somebody's name, and it's a nickname, and I just feel like you don't see the
Road
creativity.
Runner's pretty good. The Road Runner's pretty good too.
Simon, we can't have a guest from Montreal and not talk about the Habs. And one of the biggest questions right now is, what should the Canadians do with Slavkovsky?
If you would on draft day, I would have said he's probably going to play with the club. But then you look at, Gallagher has to get his minutes. Caulfield has to get his minutes. Anderson has to get his minutes. And I'm just going through the wingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doc and Monahan look good. And if you were to rewind about a month or so ago, before we knew Byron was going to be out in Armia, I think that these guys were classic. You want to showcase these guys. Maybe not Armia because he's got some tenure left on his deal. But Byron was somebody that you want to showcase. And I don't think you'll ever get a first for him, but maybe a second, maybe a third, maybe a team that's desperate. Great hockey IQ. He can skate well. He can kill penalties. So when you start adding up all the wingers, it's kind of hard to find a spot for him because I'm not a fan of the, he played on that fourth line yesterday, and I think the Canadians have a top line, and then they got 9 other forwards. And depending on the night and depending on who's rolling, that line is going to get more minutes. But playing with Jake Evans, okay. I think Jake's a good player. I don't think that he's a facilitator. I don't think he provides, that much offense for a winger. But you're not pressed. And when the bodies start to come back, at that point, maybe you make the decision. I know that everybody talks about the 9 days, but 9 games, but he can stick around long in that. If you burn a year, you burn a year, right? Like if the guy likes being here and you're trending in the right direction and you have that conversation with him that, this is your team, Nick Suzuki's team, Cole Caulfield's team, Gaten Gouli's team going forward. I don't think like burning a year is it's not ideal, but I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. It'd be nice to get him in Laval. I'm a believer of the, I thought we've seen it in Tampa Bay the last 6-7 years where their American Hockey League affiliate was just spitting out guys, whether it was guys that, not Stamkos, not Kucherov, or not Point, but everybody else in that lineup, man, spent time in that American Hockey League affiliate. They were coached by Cooper. I believe they either won a championship, maybe 2, but they were always contenders. I'm a fan of that culture. I liked what happened last year in Laval. Your American Hockey League club sucking for year after year after year is, it's not detrimental, but definitely not the recipe to success. So if you go to Laval and he turns it up and he plays, good minutes, closes out, down by a goal and he's out there closing out the game, or up by a goal and he's out there closing out the game. These are all good things, but I'm not pressed to just get him out of the lineup just yet. Playing the bottom 6 is fine for now. Maybe not, long-term over the course of a year, but I'm not pressed to just get him out of here right at that 9-game mark.
I think you're exactly right, Simon. I think, the Habs are going to have some tough decisions. You don't want your young, talented players playing in those bottom 6 roles or even those bottom pairing roles, which I think it's going to be a tough decision. Once Joel Edmondson comes back, the Habs defense is quite log-jammed right now. Arbor Jacki, do you want to send him back down to the O? I don't think he's AHL eligible yet. And you have guys like Jonathan Kovaceki, Jordan Harris, Gaten Gouli, who you would have to send down to the American Hockey League, but they're playing so well right now. You can't really send down Savard with the contract he has, and Chris Weidman just signed to an extension. So who do you think the first to go is?
And I don't think you even named the Canadians' best defenseman, and it's Mike Matheson, right? He's going to be in the.
That is very true. I definitely forgot to write Mike Matheson down in my notes.
So I think on one side you can go Gaten Gouli, you can go Harris, and then Matheson, and then I think you work everybody else out. I don't think Jacki is here to stay. Like, we talked about Slavkovsky maybe going back to Laval. I like what I see, the physicalities and stuff like that from Jacki, but I think that the game is moving a little bit too quickly, and you see that with the number of penalties. They're not overly physical penalties. They're kind of reaching in, tripping, hooking penalties. That's not good. But listen, he's playing at the NHL level, and he hasn't embarrassed himself. So I think you can send him back down. And I get I don't think you keep him here to be the number 7 defenseman. You have Wideman for that. When Edmondson comes back and Matheson comes back, you load up with guys that have logged NHL pitch. And for Jack, I think that opportunity will come, but I just think that opportunity will come probably next year. And you spoke about Edmondson. I'm a big fan of Edmondson. He never got enough play during the Cup run. I thought Weber was okay. Ben Straw was okay. I thought Edmondson was a rock, went completely unnoticed. I'm a big fan of his game. And he's got I believe he's got 2 years left on his deal, but I think you can shop him around. If he comes back, he's healthy and he plays well. His contract is not one that I think a team would shy away if you were to get him for a year and a half. David Savard, I think it was a 3-year deal, right? So again, if somebody thinks he can help long-term as well, you want to trade him this trade deadline with a year and a half left on his contract, maybe a little bit more difficult. But I don't think David Savard is a long-term solution. But just to go back to Edmondson, I think you can deal. If Edmondson comes back and he's healthy and he just plays at his level, I'm certain you can trade him at the deadline, even with a year and a half. Well, not a year and a half, but tail end of the season and one full season. Like you look at teams like a team like Edmonton, a team like Vancouver. I think teams like that. I think if you can move out a couple of bucks and move him in, I think you'd be doing a great service to your blue line. But again, I'm a little biased because I'm a fan of the player.
So speaking of players that are liked and not liked, and being a fan of a player, I was listening to TSN 690 the other night at the post-game show, and one of the callers called in, and he was stumbling, and he just kept saying, Nick Suzuki, it's too early. It's too early. And how he wouldn't have given the captaincy to Suzuki because he feels like it's too much pressure. And he was clearly a few beers deep.
And I was just like, and he called him out a couple times. They're like, where are you going?
Was it a 690 post-game show?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we have callers that are a few deep.
Yeah, and they asked him a couple times, like, where are you going with this? Like, what? Like, can you tell us why? And he was just stumbling around, didn't really have a reason. He just said it was too early. And I didn't think it was too early, but clearly some people do. Do you think it is too early for Nick Suzuki to have the captaincy?
Maybe a little bit. Definitely not my pick. I would have liked to see it go to Edmondson, but again, if you're the front office and you want a captain on opening night and you think Edmondson might not be back until Halloween or Remembrance Day or whenever, because we still don't know when he's going to be back. I think I saw some footage that he was out there skating, but you don't know. So maybe you don't want that void that long. I didn't want it. I'm not a big believer of the captaincy to begin. Like, I don't think it's a big deal. But I do believe it's a big deal when you're a young player and you're carrying the burden of the most historic franchise in hockey history and North American sport, and you've pretty much been bad for the last 5 years. And if it wasn't for a global pandemic in a Canadian division, you're probably a non-playoff team for your 4th or 5th year. I would just like for him to enjoy himself, play offense, go out there, toe drag, and do whatever and set up Caulfield, and not have to answer to a 5-game losing streak or a 6-game losing streak. I'll tell you one thing. I do like this team. I don't think they're going to be as bad as people think they are. I think their group of forwards is better. I think their goaltending will be better. Gooley, Harris, Matheson are better than overrated Sherratt, a Jeff Petrie who simply did not want to be here, and a Shea Weber that was running on empty. So I just think, you throw these names, are not household names or anything like that, but they're better than what the Canadians have had the last couple of years. Not a knock on Ben Sherratt. I just think Caden Gooley's better than him. Yeah. Mike Matheson right now is better if he's motivated and engaged than he was the Jeff Petrie from last year. Jeff Petrie had a very good career with the Canadians. He was a very good, serviceable defenseman, more than just serviceable. But last year, he was putrid. I think Matheson is an upgrade to that. Harris and whoever else you want to throw in the mix is an upgrade to Ben Sherratt. Jocks, maybe 40 games from now, maybe a year from now is an upgrade. So I don't think the team is going to be as bad. If the team was going to be bad and competing for that top spot, I just don't need my not my rookie, but my best, most talented player being speed bagged by members of the media and the fan base. I would have loved Edmondson for as long as he's here. A year, you trade him in this February, and you can hand it over to Nick. Nick takes over for the tail end of the season, and he starts next year. You want to keep Edmondson right through his contract, hand the team over to Nick Suzuki. He'll still have 6 years left on his deal, and maybe years after that. So, again, I don't think it's a very big deal, but a young player that you need a lot of productivity from. The offense goes as Nick Suzuki goes. On a bad team, and they go on one of their spins, I just don't need the weight of the world on him. And it can get ugly in this city because everybody's loving this team, right? And it's great, and it's this and it's that, but it's not going to last. If this team is out of it by December, the honeymoon will be over.
So speaking about honeymoons, the one in Vancouver is clearly over. Their Cinderella story last year came up just short with them not making the playoffs, but Bruce Boudreau was able to convince new Canucks GM Patrick Alvin to sign him to an extension in the offseason. And things are obviously not picking up where they left off. The Canucks are winless to start the year. Fans are throwing jerseys on the ice. And Bruce went into the media the other day and talked about his players being mentally weak.
That's a tough one, right? Tough because we're not there. I don't know physically in the room, right? But I don't cover that team enough. But I don't know, man. Being called mentally weak by your coach, I don't know what's the spin there. Like, what's the motivation there?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think guys like that. I think, I don't know many ex-NHL players. I've hung around with a few and this and that, whether it's Sergio or Knuckles or whatever. Like, you don't call these guys lazy. Like, lazy is another term that they don't want to, they don't want to hear. If your coach calls you lazy, that's a shot, not playing well, blowing your assignments. That's fine. But, not mentally tough. That's a shot. That's a shot at the leadership. That's a shot right across the board. And they played some good hockey last year. So I don't know what can possibly be the difference from last year to this year, 4 games or whatever, if they played 3 or 4 games, what the difference is. But I'm not a fan. That doesn't have to get to us.
No, I agree. I think there's a time and a place if you're going to say something like that, but throwing that out there with no context and not really sure who you're throwing that at, especially this early on in the season, I don't think there's a place for that, and especially in a society that is so woke and mental health and all that kind of stigma. Like, I feel like that's kind of opening a can of worms for somebody to have some interpretation of that comment, for it to go kind of south for Bruce Boudreau in that situation.
You can say it, you can mean it, you can think it, but the reality is it's 2022, and there's certain things I don't think you should say as a coach out loud. I'm sure in the 80s they said a lot of stuff that if you were to say it today, you'd be in a lot of trouble. So I don't know. I didn't like that.
Yeah, Justin and I weren't fans of that comment either, and in this day and age, we'll see how long it is, or if those comments will end up biting Bruce Boudreau in the butt.
Well, that's all I have for you.
All right.
Well, I'm assuming I can speak for you. I have for the last probably 45 minutes to an hour. I really appreciate this. I've probably lived one of my dreams. Normally, Sean Campbell cuts me off when I call in at about 5 minutes, and you sat down with me for 45.
There you go. I'm going to tell Campbell that. Shame on him.
Well, actually, we have Sean Campbell on next week.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I'll remind him. I actually called in the night that I got engaged because I missed. It was during the Cup run, and he played back the audio from the Toffoli overtime goal against Winnipeg, so that I could hear it live.
That's awesome. That's a good man.
But well, we'd definitely love to have you back on in the future if you enjoyed yourself and you're willing.
Keep me posted, boys.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, boys. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, now to wrap up episode 2, we move on to our final segment, Blunder of the Week. Now, as a guy who takes a lot of pride in his jerseys, Blunder of the Week was an easy choice this week, as we give it to the Canucks fans. Joel, it's all you.
Mom, cover your ears. What the fuck are you doing in Vancouver? You're 6 games in, throwing a $150 jersey onto the ice. I mean, maybe the cost of living down there is a little cheaper. Maybe the pay is a little higher than here in Ontario. But I could understand if maybe you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, maybe the Colorado Avalanche, Tampa Bay Lightning, maybe a team that is really going for it, is close to the cup, and they're underperforming, and they go, what is it, 0-4, 0-5, 0-6, whatever. But I don't even know if Vancouver's out of a rebuild yet. And you're throwing jerseys on the ice? Give your fucking head a shake. I just, it baffles me that this is what you're doing. Like, yeah, you have Brock Besser, Bo Horvat, maybe Tyler Myers as veterans, but you have a lot of young guys in the lineup. You have that Kuzmenko guy that just came over from the K, that he's played the 6 games or so that you've played so far this season, and this is what you're showing him your fan base is like. I'm not sure he's telling any of his buddies that could be potentially coming over to come sign in Vancouver. I don't think the welcome to him or the young players is really there. I think Blunder of the Week is for sure appropriate to the Vancouver fans. To me, those aren't the real fans. Those are the ones that are going for the cheap beers on student night, or the ones that got free corporate tickets. To me, anybody that is a true hockey fan isn't throwing their jersey on the ice, especially not after 6 games.
All right, Joel, time to cool down a little bit there. But that's a wrap for episode 2 of Average Jocks Hockey Podcast. On behalf of Joel and myself, we'd like to thank you all for tuning in.
All right, I've cooled down a bit there. Tune in next week for episode 3 as we talk with Simon's co-worker Sean Campbell, also from TSN 690, and we're going to talk all things hockey. We look forward to having Sean on. Once again, thank you to Simon Tsalikis for being a great guest, and we look forward to talking to you guys next week. Take care.